Thank you for joining us today to learn more about the core in the Diploma program. My name is Meris Shenstone and I'm the Diploma Program Coordinator at ISB. In our previous presentation on core, we discussed what each of the sections is about. This time we will delve a little deeper. In the first section, on the extended essay, we will look at the skills learned in the process of writing the essay and how it prepares students for university. This will be followed by a presentation on CAS, which will focus on the program's learning outcomes and what they look like at ISB. Finally, Mr. Johnson will discuss the ideas and questions which underpin the theory of knowledge subject and how they apply in different subjects. We hope you enjoy learning more about what your children are doing in the DP Core program at ISB. So let's begin with the extended essay. Welcome to the first presentation on the extended essay. In this session, we'll have two sections. The first one is a brief overview of what the extended essay is. The bulk of this session, though, will be spent discussing the skills that are developed by completing the extended essay. These are the skills of research, of practicing academic integrity, of academic writing skills, and finally, of critical thinking. In an earlier presentation, we discussed what the extended essay is. In the extended essay, students choose a topic from a subject which they're studying in the diploma program, and they then develop that topic much further than they've discussed in the classroom. They begin by researching the topic, by making sure that their foundation of their knowledge is strong. They will develop an argument. They'll think critically about the research which has already been done, and then using those academic sources, they'll build their own point of view. This ties in with an important ISB value, that of being knowledgeable. We believe that all learners should be equipped with the skills needed to interpret and analyse information effectively in order to be well informed and make balanced, rational decisions based on evidence and credible research. The first skill which students develop is research skills, and this is so important for their university life. They need to be able to find reputable academic sources, and these are sources that they probably haven't had to access up till now in their education. They need to move far beyond Wikipedia. They need to learn to make their searches focused so that they can use their time purposefully, but also so that they become aware of the resources that are available to them and how to access the materials that they'll need to use at university. They'll be looking at academic papers, possibly for the first time. They need to understand how those papers are written, what the conventions are, and that will help them to make it easier to find relevant information so they're not reading the entire paper to find just one small section of it. Research skills at ISB are learned through the supervisor and through the extended essay sessions which we hold, and there are two particularly important resources. The first one is the librarian, Mr. Kruger, who has been trained and is well versed in the extended essay and working with extended essay students. Secondly, Mr. Kruger has developed a number of resources and it provides access to those resources through the internal website, through the library website. The second skill, and this one is really important, is that of academic integrity. It's very easy for students to not understand how important it is, and it is absolutely vital that when they enter university, and indeed as they finish their international baccalaureate diploma, that they understand the importance of this part of their work. They need to consider and understand the ethics of using the work of others. They need to develop good habits. It's very simple. It's simply a matter of citing as they go. Students have to learn to do that. So often we will find that they have not cited a resource and yet they meant to. Their intent was not to do the wrong thing. It was merely a habit of not developing a good habit. We'll discuss the consequences for IB students of academic dishonesty, and we'll also look at the consequences for university. Again, it's relevant to an ISB value, to be principled. We strive to be honest, fair, and to respect the dignity and rights of everyone. Researchers, academics are all entitled to have their work cited, to have the work that they've done recognised as theirs. To develop good habits is simply a matter of, as soon as students use the work of another person, as soon as they copy any work, any words, or paraphrase into their own document, they need to go straight to Google Citations and they need to cite the work. Google Citations is on the Tools menu of Google Document, and it's a simple matter, as you'll see on the left-hand image here, of moving down to Citations, of clicking on that, and then the window that's on the right-hand side will pop up. They can put in the website address, the URL, they can use a whole range of sources, and it will provide the citations for them that they need in their works cited page. In addition, wherever they use a quotation or they directly paraphrase the work of somebody else, they merely need to click on a button which says to cite, and it will put the citations into the document for them. The students need to learn to do this every time they use the information that is somebody else's. The IB has strong consequences for any work which is found to have been paraphrased or to have been plagiarized. The IB defines academic misconduct as behaviour, whether deliberate or inadvertent, that results in or may result in the student or any other candidate gaining an unfair advantage in one or more components of assessment. The key point there is whether deliberate or inadvertent. Students need to develop good habits, and the extended essay is an ideal place for them to learn to do this. It's important that students understand this for when they go to university. So not only does the extended essay provide students with the opportunity to learn to write an academic paper, but also to make sure that they avoid the terrible consequences of plagiarizing. If in their IB work plagiarism is discovered, there are a range of consequences. But and as I said earlier, intent is not a defence. Students would not be eligible for a final grade in the subject if this was found to have been committed, and that would mean that they can no longer pass their diploma. So it is really, really important that students learn how to do this through the extended essay. Oxford University, there's a statement in their website, even if plagiarism is inadvertent, it can result in a penalty. So the same philosophy that intent is not a defence is carried on into university life. The University of Michigan says all University of Michigan students are personally responsible for educating themselves about plagiarism. It may well not be taught. So that is an important part of the extended essays. This is where we teach students what they need to know. The University of Michigan also notes that international students may face immigration status consequences in addition to academic consequences if plagiarism is found to have occurred. English language skills as a third skill that is taught in the extended essay, and it's quite different from writing that they've done in the past in many cases. The conventions are, for example, that they write in third person. There's no I, there's no you, there's no we. It's written in third person in an academic style. A formal register is used. And particularly for second language learners, it's really important that students understand what words constitute formal and informal, and that's often a source of learning for them in the extended essay process. They need to write in present tense, and they need to make sure that they use subject-specific vocabulary. All of this helps them to present focused and analytical writing in their extended essay. And the fourth skill that I will discuss today is a skill of critical thinking. The students will use the methodology of their subject. They'll write their extended essay in the form that is used in that subject. Their arguments must be evidence-based. And so the research is important. The way that how do we know comes back to theory of knowledge, as you will see quite readily in a presentation from Mr. Johnson, which is to come. The criterion in the extended essay which receives the most marks is that of critical thinking. And this criterion assesses the extent to which critical thinking skills have been used to analyse and evaluate the research undertaken. So students become knowers. They become as expert as they can in this field that they're looking at and the topic that they're looking at. They look at the research and the work of other knowers in this field, and they assess it and analyse it. If you would like some more information about the extended essay, feel free to contact Mr. Geispers, who is the extended essay coordinator, or myself, and we will be happy to answer your questions. Thank you for listening to this presentation.
Hello, my name is Nico Geisbers, and I am the CAS coordinator at ISB. I'm going to be talking to you about our Creativity, Activity, and Service program, building upon our previous video that talked about what do those strands mean in the eyes of the ISB, and talking more about how it's run at our school. So a couple of things we're going to be talking about. First is, why do we actually do CAS? What is the purpose of CAS within the DP program? And also explaining what the learning outcomes are and how that's tied into the CAS program. So there are multiple reasons why the CAS program is a part of the DP. One of those is to give students opportunities for leadership. Often students will actually run clubs, they will run events, run activities, and so it gives them a chance to step to the front and be a leader. This can also look great on their college applications when they're actually at that point. The second thing is for them to be able to pursue personal interests. So if there's a student who loves drawing and art, but didn't fit that into their DP program, this gives them a chance to do something that they just enjoy. Also, it's to bring balance to the DP program. So the DP program is a very rigorous program, and this gives students a chance to do something, be forced to do something that they enjoy, instead of just putting those things off on the sideline. And finally is developing an understanding of the learning outcomes. And this is what we're going to focus on the rest of the presentation. What are these learning outcomes? And how do students actually participate in those things? So the learning outcomes are actually what students are supposed to take away from the CAS program. What are they supposed to actually be learning from the CAS program? And they do this through reflections. But our students demonstrate this regularly. So the first one, our learning outcome, is identifying their own strengths and developing areas for growth. So an example of this, the student was actually quite adept at making computers, and so they were able to put computers together. That was an area of strength. But the student wanted to actually communicate with other people about how to make computers. They wanted to actually put this on YouTube. How do you actually put together your own computer? And this was an area for growth. And so that's what they focused on. They developed their video editing skills, their presentation skills, and so on. The second learning outcome is to demonstrate that challenges have been undertaken and developing new skills in the process. And so, a couple of examples here. One of them, a student wanted to learn more about fabricating things out of different materials. And so, they decided to make a hat. And so this was their process. They learned more about sewing and the process of making a hat. And so they developed their skills, and you can see a cute little final product. Another student wanted to learn about making RC cars, remote control cars. And so they went straight from the drawing phase to the fabrication phase, obviously developing new skills. They were doing 3D printing and stuff like that. And then actually producing an RC car in the end with the electronics and everything. The third learning outcome is demonstrating how to initiate and plan a CAS process. Now, this student was, along with a group, was going to be providing food for a charity event. And so they had to go right from the beginning. How do you start? Like, what are you thinking of doing? What are you thinking of producing? They had to get information from the people who were going to be consuming the food about what they wanted, and actually producing the food themselves. And so they had to plan out what they were going to be doing. This is one of my favorite pictures a student submitted, is a picture of them falling down after they went roller skating. And I think this is a great example of learning outcome 4, showing commitment and perseverance in CAS experiences. Later on, that same student ended up submitting a video of themselves inline skating along the beach to show that they did persevere. They did keep up. They kept working at it to get better. Our fifth learning outcome is demonstrating the skills and recognizing the benefits of working collaboratively. And so this is a picture of a group of students who made a mural that was focused on mental health. You can actually see in the middle there, a certain darkness is needed for the stars to shine. And so they work together at this, and this is actually a mural that hangs at our school. Another example of this is one of our student bands got together and prepared some music for a fundraiser for Isaac House. This same fundraiser had a pair of students who worked together. They had only known each other for a couple of weeks, and yet they did a violin duo together. Our sixth learning outcome is demonstrating engagement with issues of global significance. The COVID pandemic hit everyone hard, and a couple of students decided to help some local farmers, and they collected flowers and sold those flowers in order to raise some money. Many of our students end up going on beach cleanups or garbage or plastic cleanups, and so this is obviously an issue that we are very focused on in our school, and students pursue that on their own as well. Our seventh learning outcome is a little bit hard to take pictures of, but it's recognize and consider the ethics of choices and actions. And so this group here was actually making hand sanitizer, and they had to make some ethical choices. What quality do they make? Who do they provide this hand sanitizer to? Another group was actually preparing lunches. And so they had to think, who are we providing this to? How do we do this while also maintaining dignity for the people who are receiving it? These are some challenges and choices. So that is a snapshot of what is going on with CAS at ISB.
Welcome to Theory of Knowledge, or TOK as it is often called. The question is always asked by parents and those not familiar with the IB, what is TOK? The short answer is that theory of knowledge is a branch of philosophy focused on how we know what we claim to know. The longer answer, I will demonstrate to you the best I can through a few real-world examples. My name is Brent Johnson, and I look forward to being your guide to better understanding TOK. First, I would like to start with a quote by Stephen Hawking that encapsulates TOK. He said, "The greatest enemy of knowledge is not ignorance, it is the illusion of knowledge." What this means is that not knowing is not the enemy, but thinking you know something that is untrue is the enemy, and what TOK tries to tackle. In the world of fake news and misleading information, TOK is certainly more necessary than it ever has. The contents of this presentation will start by looking at a distinction between first and second order knowledge addressed through the lens of language acquisition, biology, and history. Then we'll look at real-world examples of TOK in language and literature, art, math, and psychology. We'll then look at the aims of TOK. Finally, we'll finish up by looking at the units covered in TOK and the 12 key concepts that drive them. The first place I'd like to start to help you understand TOK and the difference between individual subjects and TOK is to look at the types of questions they asked. First order questions are about the subject, as shown in the left-hand column. They generally asked, what do we know? Theories, dates, names, formulas, parts of a cell, etc. DP subjects are mostly concerned with first-order knowledge questions. Second-order questions, seen in the right-hand column, are not out to seek answers within the subject, but are questions about how that subject goes about answering the questions it asked. They are questions about the process of constructing knowledge and what counts as knowledge in that field, not questions about knowledge itself. For example, I might ask a first-order question about whether or not UFOs exist, but I would ask a second-order question if I wondered whether your opinion is enough to persuade me. TOK is mostly interested in second-order knowledge questions. Here is an example of a first-order question from a language acquisition class. How important to Spanish culture is bullfighting? And this is followed by a knowledge claim, or what someone may claim is the answer. Bullfighting is crucial to Spanish identity. The student may even give a reason why they think this is. This is the type of question a DP language acquisition teacher may have students explain. However, second-order questions, remember, ask how language acquisition may go about answering the question. The question, for example, how does not living in a culture make it difficult to understand the importance of traditions within that culture, is more of a focus of TOK. Here is an example of a first-order question in biology. And here is what a second-order question may look like, focusing on the process of knowing. Here is an example of a first-order question in history. And again, here is what a second-order question may look like. Notice that the second-order knowledge claim states that historians sometimes use their own values as lenses to explore the past. This is how we know in history. To dive a bit deeper, let's look at a specific example of how TOK is addressed through the lens of language and literature. Language is constantly changing and developing over time. And even though world languages are governed by certain rules, the main goal of language is to communicate effectively, no matter if the rules are followed. Over 2 billion people speak English worldwide, for example, but only about 400 million of those are native speakers. So the language has changed to fit the speakers and culture. In recent years, social media, texting, and emojis have been blamed for killing language. But is this the case? Does social media threaten language or allow us to create new ways to communicate ideas? These are the types of questions we propose in TOK, which could lead us to ask further knowledge questions, such as, is it necessary to follow grammatical and linguistic rules? What causes language to change? And how about art? Leonardo da Vinci's Salvator Mundi painting was sold for $450 million in 2017. That's $500 million. That's the GDP of the British Virgin Islands. Is it worth it? If so, why? What makes the Salvador Mundi so special? Age? New paint strokes? Painted by someone famous? I forgot to mention that many art experts are split over whether the painting is actually genuine, with some saying it was not painted by Da Vinci at all. So why did the buyers care? This leads us to ask further TOK knowledge questions. What is art? How can the value of art be justified? In math, few of us realize the extent to which algorithms control our lives. Google something and you've used an algorithm. Watch Netflix and you've used an algorithm. There are not many technologies we use not operating algorithms. In fact, some algorithms and computer codes have become so complex they are no longer understood. This leads us to ask further knowledge questions. Who is in control of the way human society progresses? What are the ethical implications of allowing computers to make decisions? Am I making my own decisions or only getting what I've always got, which is confirmation bias? In psychology, most knowledge is generated through observation and experimentation to better understand human behavior and cognition. In a conversation, we might say, well, according to Philip Zimbardo, blah, 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 blah. But are we citing this source due to the fact he is a famous Stanford University psychologist? If so, this is cognitive bias and the appeal to authority. Or are we citing the actual research findings? If so, then we need to know and evaluate the methodology in which the knowledge was created. In other words, how were the findings generated? You can see from this comment strip of the science news cycle that a research with a weak correlation turns into a strong causation through media interpretations. And grandma is wearing aluminum foil on her head to stay away from something that doesn't exist. This leads us to ask knowledge questions such as, how can interpretation affect the way knowledge is communicated? How can we effectively evaluate research findings in the human sciences? And how does knowledge change over time? Hopefully, now that you understand a bit more about TOK, the aims of the course might make more sense to you. In TOK, we hope to encourage students to reflect on the question, how do we know that, as opposed to what we know? Expose students to uncertainty and questions with multiple plausible answers, not certainty and well-defined answers. Encourage students to be more aware of their own perspectives and biases, and to reflect critically on their own beliefs and assumptions. Encourage students with multiple perspectives, foster open-mindedness, and develop intercultural understanding. Encourage students to identify similarities and differences in the methods of inquiry used in different areas of knowledge. Consider the importance of values, responsibility, and ethical concerns related to the production, acquisition, application, and communication of knowledge. And finally, to encourage students to make more connections between academic disciplines by exploring underlying concepts. How do we tackle these philosophical questions? Through big questions, of course. Each unit is given a focus and a big question that addresses all content in the unit. Big question number 1 is the foundation unit. And the big question is, what is theory of knowledge and why do we study it? This unit introduces the framework and assessments for TOK. Big question number 2, values, ask, how does our knowledge about the world inform the way we construct our values? This looks at our ethics and morals and how they may develop depending on culture. Big question 3, spin, focuses on how is our understanding of the world influenced by the way knowledge is communicated? I can communicate that 9 out of 10 dentists recommend Colgate, but is that true? Of course not. its spin. Big question 4, perspective, addresses how do our perspectives and biases shape our knowledge of the world? We are human and by nature biased. Big question 5, creativity, looks at how is new knowledge about the world created? And big question 6, experts, get students to think about how do we become discerning knowers? These units and knowledge questions are explored through the lens of the 12 key concepts in TOK, particularly the concepts of certainty, interpretation, justification, perspective, and truth. To know even more about TOK, I encourage you to talk to your child on a regular basis and have them discuss with you what they are learning. I think you'll find the topics very interesting and certainly thought-provoking. I hope this presentation has been helpful for you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for watching this presentation. We trust that you found it both interesting and informative.